Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have questions?
My daughter participated in your shimmer.
Oh, did she really?
Too.
Oh, awesome.
I wish I could do a mobile joke, to be honest.
Okay, so,
I can still do it.
so Jordan, when did you start the shimmers?
Um,
What did you do in girls' hair?
I started in January, so I started talking about it to a lot of my friends, kind of like Christmas time, but I had to wait till after Christmas so the tinsel jokes would get passed. But I started doing them in January, and I had to do a lot before soccer season started, so I was working every other night in January and February, and then it was hard to get some in during March, and then the last one I did was last weekend. So.
All of a sudden I would see them in the hallway.
No.
Cool.
They look so
Wow,
awesome.
yeah.
People either really like them or don't know what they are.
I'm so surprised that they hold up to hair dryers. And
Yeah, that's what I thought too. My aunt put them in and I was like, what is this? But they work really well. The only thing is I work in the hospital as like a CNA, and the nurse, my teacher, hated them. She like pulled them out of our hair. It's like, I'm not doing anything. Yeah, and they only fall out when the hair they're tied onto falls out. So, yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So finding that Susan G. Komen could not or would not send funds to Durango,
hmm
how do you feel about doing the walk still, and what
Well, I
did your
actually
attitude
did.
change?
Yeah, I actually did my paper on that because once I found that out, I did my essay on that, and I looked up where they send their money, and it's extremely frustrating because most of their money goes to marketing it and to like the funds of exposing people to what breast cancer is, but there was very little that went to the actual treatment and the care of women with it. And to me, I feel like that's the most important part, is like the research and figuring out what it is and helping people, not just telling them about it. I think it's important to know about it, but to treat it is just as vital. So I figured if I donate it to a center rather than Susan G. Komen, I know my money is getting used the way I want it to. So that's what I figured out.
Very interesting.
I too found the same thing with Susan G. Komen.
Yeah, it was so interesting. I sat there for like 30 minutes. Are you kidding me? And then it makes me think back to like all the walks and runs I've done. So I've just helped you advertise, like, I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, you have an incredible presence, Jordan, and I think that having done something like this, I really hope that even though you said it was hard and time management was hard, you learned a lot, and you said you learned a
Oh,
lot.
I did.
I would love to know, though, that you maybe had some plans in your future.
I was thinking about doing it in college too.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And can you see that event planning might be in your future, or how would you feel about that?
Oh, I don't know. Because I think I want to go into nursing,
Okay,
but I could do event planning on the side.
something like that.
My days off.
Yeah. I think that you've just really found a niche market
Yeah.
for something that hasn't necessarily been done before, and I
Mhm.
think if you have that passion in your heart, that's really going to stand you in good stead for the future.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great job.
Well, thank you so much for your
Very
time.
impressive.
Thank you.
Okay. Good, so I want you guys to picture this. It's a beautiful day, and you're with your family, and you decide that you guys all want to go fishing. And you get there, it's so nice, you throw out your line, and then you look across the pond or lake. And you look at a family that's kind of similar to yours. You've got a mom, a dad, and you've got a kid that's give or take 5 or 6 years old, we'll say. And the dad decides, you know what, I'm going to teach my kid how to go fishing today. So the kid throws out his line, and they're all sitting there. Then you look across that lake 5 minutes later, and the kid's going crazy, he's got a fish on. He's really, really happy about it. And the dad comes running over there, and he doesn't want to show that he doesn't know what to do, but so he's just waiting for the kid to bring up the fish. The fish is flopping everywhere. The dad picks it up, gives a quick diagnostic, looks down the fish's throat and goes, yeah, this one's a goner. So he decides to cut the line with his pliers and walks off for about a minute. He comes back with the pliers and the hook in one hand and then the fish. He throws the fish back in the water, and it's upside down. And then you got the kid going, hey Dad, why is the fish swimming away? Come on, let it live. And then Dad's got to give the whole circle of life conversation. You know what? That's not always fun. So my senior project was teaching catch and release fishing at the International Sportsman's Expo. And this whole situation could have been prevented had they been well educated on a subject like this. So basically my project started with me wanting to shadow a Division of Wildlife representative, and his name was Scott Gilmore. And what he did is he was the head for fish and conservation of wildlife within the Division of Wildlife. And what his job was is to set up, like places like Chatfield, the fishing conservation, and with hunting and fishing licenses to make sure that people were actually paying for those and regulating all those processes. And it opened my eyes a lot because an organization like that really doesn't get enough credit as it should, because it really does take care of all the forestry management and make sure that all the places like Chatfield Reservoir and all the national parks, so that future generations can enjoy them the same way that we do now. So when I was talking with my mentor after getting to see all the things that he did and the various activities that he's planned, I was really trying to find a way to express how to show a body of evidence, and a big learning stretch for me. So he brought up that they have this catch and release fishing thing they do every year at the International Sportsman's Expo. And basically what they do is, when I showed up there on Friday, they set up this 20 to 30 foot tank. And it's full of trout, and I'm not much of a building person at all, but they had to do so much that I had no idea about, but I got to learn about filtration systems, and there has to be a certain type of temperature for the fish. And after all that was done, I was really excited, because I put so much effort into making that tank, So the day of the event, it was a perfect setup because they understand that you've got, the classic dad that's like, oh, son, you're going to love this, you're going to love fishing, you're going to be just like me. And they're 5 years old, and it's really not that kid-friendly there. So they all go there, and the dad's looking at all the different fishing trips he's going to want to take, and he talks with different people, and the kid's just sitting there like, oh, man, this is kind of boring. But then he goes and sees a fishing tank, and he's like, oh my gosh, I got to go fishing. Dad, take me fishing, take me fishing. So within the first 30 minutes on Saturday, we had 100 kids in line, and it was unbelievable. It was really overwhelming. So what they had me do first was, can I come up here? Yeah. All right. Was I had to teach them about catch and release fishing before they went to the tank, so that they all knew how to do it beforehand. So the number one thing about catch and release fishing is that you have a normal hook like this, a standard everyday hook, and you've got this point at the front. Well, basically, most hook manufacturers will make this extra barb right here. And you don't want that, because imagine if you're a fish. You got the hook in your mouth. You're going to do everything you can to get away from the person that's on that other end of the line. So what happens with this extra barb is that it ends up tearing up the tissue within the fish's mouth, and it makes it a lot more stressful and detrimental towards the fish's health. So what you want to do is, what we told the kids is, we each gave them a hook, and they took needle nose pliers and pinched down this hook just like this. So then it's less painful for the fish, and it helps out their health a lot more. There's less stress going into it. And because you've got so many fish in a tank, they're going to get caught 3 times a day. So you don't want to have the fish be too stressed out. And, all right, you're good, I think. The second thing I had about catch and release fishing, what I had to teach them, is that those of you that have been fishing before, you've got a fish on, you're bringing it in, and you just go and grab the fish, and you bring them up, and you take a nice picture, make it look really big for everybody. And then so when you show people, they're like, oh man, it looks so nice. And then you throw the fish back in the water, and you're like, oh man, I got all this stuff on my hands. What is this stuff? And that's not what you want to have happen, because what that is actually, it's called nature's Band-Aid, and for use of better words. And it's basically a slime that the fish uses to help treat infection and disease that it might have. So say that the fish gets cut for whatever reason, that slime will actually move to the source and make sure that it stays disease-free and that it doesn't end up getting hurt in the future. And so what we did is, the way to help prevent this is, when the fish is coming in, you want to dunk your hand in the water so that when you go to touch the fish, you have a layer of water between your hand surface and the fish's surface, so that when you actually start holding them, you don't end up hurting this fish's health. And the cool study that I found is at Lake Erie. They were starting to catch a lot of bass. It kind of looked like this, but they had a bunch of lines on them, and they had a bunch of dots, black dots, and they were wondering why. They were looking at if it was a hybrid breed or what was it. And it turns out that people were practicing catch and release fishing there. The problem was that people were not wetting their hands before, so what you were actually seeing was finger marks and fingerprints on the fish. So it was really visible, and it was a great thing for everybody to look at. This is also really great for me to go and see this, because it helped my public speaking skills a whole bunch. Because getting up in front of hundreds of kids, and parents especially, teaching about something like this, it was a lot harder on day one, because it's just overwhelming. You've got so many faces looking at you, and by the time it was Sunday, I felt really comfortable about it, you know? Like, it was like second nature for me. And then towards the end of Saturday and beginning of Sunday, they had me actually work at the tank with the kids. And let me tell you, it was so hectic. You've got hooks everywhere. They're trying to get the hooks out. It's like, oh, Daddy, come here, look at this. I didn't know what to do. I was freaking out. I was like, okay, I don't know how to manage this. So after about like 2 hours of being out there, I really got to settle down, and I got to learn like what was helpful for the kids to help their learning so that I didn't make it too complicated. And it was really cool to see how parents reacted. And they always thought they had to keep the fish. They're always like, oh wait, I don't have to keep the fish? This is so weird. But and stuff like that. And catch and release is a big deal too, because when you turn 16, you have to buy a fishing license, which is like around $35. But if people don't always practice catch and release fishing, there won't be any fish or any incentive for people to want to go fishing, you know? And it's the money that they get from the fishing licenses that makes it so that they can stock ponds, so that they can help wildlife, preserve areas, so that people can still love hunting and fishing the way that they do now. So if people just don't practice it all the time, there's not going to be incentive for people to want to go fishing. So that's why this was a big deal here. And people got to know about licenses, and they purchased a lot of them too. The last thing that was a great learning stretch for me being here was because I'm looking into going into somewhere in the environmental area when I'm older. So I really wanted to take this opportunity to get to look at all the different areas that the Division of Wildlife had, either if it was fish and conservation, wildlife conservation, water quality, all those different things. But by the end of Sunday, I actually got to talk with all of them and see like their dislikes, their likes about it, and what they really thought that would be perfect for me. So I actually have determined now that I'm going to CSU, and I'm going to go take a major in recreation and tourism for the environment. And this was a great experience just because I loved hearing from these people like what they do in their everyday life, and I could totally see myself doing that just because I have to be proactive in my working environment, because it's hard. I couldn't live behind a cubicle. I really couldn't. It'd be super hard for me. So it was great to get an input from everybody about what they do. So if I could choose a project over again, it would definitely be this one, because I definitely see myself doing everything that these people do in their everyday lives, and it was a great insight into my future. That's it.
Nice.
Oh, and I do plan on donating these posters to the Division of Wildlife, so that the next time that they teach this event, they can use all these different props and stuff for it.
Can you show us that bottom prop that?
This one here?
The other one that's framed.
Okay, so this one was kind of cool because I looked through the newspaper, and luckily enough, I did find an article, and it was talking about fly fishing in rivers, and how rivers have been overfished so much that, you know how most rivers do feed into the lakes in Colorado? Most of the river fishing gets overpressured. So most of the lakes just don't end up having a lot of fish, and that's why the license sales have been going down so much, because people figure, you know, there's no fish, everybody keeps them, why even pay, you know? So it talks about that, and it talks about how, yeah, just basically a bunch of stuff like that. License was a big deal too, because they caught a lot of people that don't pay for the licenses, just because, you know, they don't go that much, and the times they do go, they aren't that successful. That's it.
Any other questions, or? I have one.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it that bass would become discolored? Was it a temporary thing? In other words?
Well, what I saw in the article is when they had the pictures, I think it was in my, actually I didn't have a picture in there. It was just black, it just had black lines, and all the pictures had like black blotches. I'm not sure. They said that it was susceptible to disease in those areas, and the pigmentation of the skin had gone away because there wasn't that slime there to cover it.
So it was like a permanent?
Yeah, it was permanent.
Okay.
It was permanent.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Where would I have found out about that kind of opportunity to take children and learn? Is it marketed around here or advertised?
Like, what do you mean?
If I wanted to have taken my children to that event,
Mm-hmm.
where would I have found out about it?
Well, that's a good question. About at the Division of Wildlife, they try to put up flyers and stuff, But most people that continue to go to the Sportsman's Expo,
Oh, okay.
they always
okay.
bring their kids there just for that event. Because you'll have kids that go through that like 5 times just because they get to catch a fish over and over again.
And have you thought about maybe getting some schools involved in that kind of event? Telling friends, telling elementary school?
Well, that's the thing too, is they use that for either juvenile kids or they use it as like community, you can use it for community service too throughout high school, you know. It's just a great way for kids to get out there, and it's better than, you know, picking up trash every day and stuff. So that's why they leave it open for many volunteers to do.
Right.
And sometimes we just get adults that just love to teach it. And like in my portfolio, I have a couple pictures with just like adults that are like 45 years old, but they just love seeing kids and helping them out with this type of project. It was really fun.
It looked like a chaos scene. Your pictures with all
Oh
those
man, yeah.
bulls in
Yeah.
there. Like,
We kept on telling them, don't cast, okay.
Does the Sports Expo go to various states and everything too?
I think it does. It comes here every year to the convention center downtown. It's usually around the same day, and I think it does move. I think it does, because all the people there were like from different states and stuff, trying to advertise their different fishing trips. So.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very
very much.
good.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
Nice to see you.
Okay, every day you watch TV and watch the weather, you never realize where these images come from. They come from satellites, from space, from the rockets that we put up there. And these satellites are millions of miles away, and yet we get such perfect images and everything. Hi, my name is Nicole Harris, and my project was to build a rocket. This is my rocket. It is a Delta IV medium. And my purpose was to learn how it goes through, like the stages it goes through before and after it launches. And I built this from scratch. So I wanted to grow as a person and learn how to be more creative and learn simple basics of the field of engineering. Also, I wanted to explore my creativity on a deeper level because honestly, I'm not that creative person. So I chose this topic because I plan to go into the aeronautical field of engineering next year at Boulder, and I thought it would really help me really realize that that's what I want to do, because you hear students switching their fields all the time when they go to college. So I wanted to learn the basic knowledge to make sure it's what I wanted to do, and I also picked it because it's close to me, because I know a lot of, my mom works in the field sort of. She's not as high as that though. So I wanted to learn more deeply about it. So I began with my project. I originally thought I was going to do an international space station because I just think it's really cool. I mean, there's so many countries that went into this one product, and it does so many things, but we don't really know what it does. So I thought I would do that. I thought I would do a kit of it just to start off and like elaborate on it a little bit more. Then later I decided I wanted to do a rocket instead. Also, I couldn't find a kit, which I was kind of happy about it because I thought it would just be too simple. So I found that I was going to do it from scratch, and as soon as I found that, I decided I wanted to do the Delta IV because I thought it was a really cool rocket. And actually recently, they had a rocket go up in March that was a Delta IV.